Okay, the format of tonight's meeting is to have a guest speaker share their experience, strength and hope on how the Alcoholics Anonymous program of recovery is working in their lives for 15 to 20 minutes. Tonight we have asked Milton to share.
Hi, thanks Matt for asking me to come along, because it's always good for me to get out of my comfort zone and get up front and address Alcoholics Anonymous and do a little bit of service. And anyway, my name's Milton. I'm an alcoholic and I started today. That's through coming to meetings like this and sharing and through a higher power. And look, I grew up in a violent household. And I'm not saying that caused my alcoholism, but I locked all my emotions in by the time I was 6 or 8, and I shut the world out. And by the time I picked up a drink at around 12, I loved it straight from the start. It was a family do. I didn't grow up around alcohol. It was a family do. There was a bottle of champagne in they'd been put in the fridge with the cork in it, and it was 3/4 full, 1 glass or 2 glasses been taken out, and I had a glass, and then I drank it until the bottle was this much. I couldn't finish it off, because someone might say who finished it off. I was waiting, but I was sweating on the next bottle to be open. I was sweating on someone to come and pick up that bottle and finish it off, so they'd open up another one, so I could get into it again without being caught out. But that didn't happen, So I used to, by the time I was in high school, I got into high school and I had a mate, and we used to walk down the shop at lunchtime and walk down through the estate, and we knew a bloke who made home brew, and I used to jump his fence and grab a couple of bottles of home brew and drink down the oval at lunchtime, and that was great, and then it just got worse from there, so I was a thief straight from the start and a liar, and I never used to go back, it grew from there. I didn't go back to classes after lunchtime, and then I used to meet a mate before school, and we wouldn't go to school, and then we'd meet up at someone's place whose parents worked, and we'd drink and we'd party and we'd have fun like that, and by the time I was 15 around that time, I'd said enough of school. I hated authority, I hated teachers, I hated my parents, I hated police, I hated everyone, so I left school and got a living position, and that was great. I was out of parental control. I was off by myself, and in that industry, it was in the horse racing industry, and we used to travel, and your horse would win, you get a sling, bang, and the float driver used to stop at the pub on the way back from the races, and there'd be 6 or 8 people in those floats, and they'd stop, and you'd empty out your bucket, and fill it up with ice and into the cans, and I did that. I was able to survive, but it got worse and worse because I was never able to, look after the horse when I got back to the stables. I wasn't be able to look after my duties and my job, and so after 2 years of that, I was still restless, irritable and discontent, and so, I moved on. I thought, I'd had enough of that, and I got work in the building trade, just labouring and things like that, and I was just sharing flats with friends, whoever I met. But there was always trouble, there was always police, we'd have loud music, and we'd always get kicked out, we wouldn't pay rent and the power bills and phones and all those kinds of troubles, all those things that you never cleaned up. And my house was a revolving door. I used to always go home when there was trouble and stay a little while, and then I'd always drag. The police started getting involved in my life, court cases. I started to, I just started, things fell apart. I never looked at myself. I always looked at, that I was a good bloke having a bad trot and all those kind of things, and I moved around. I took jobs in the country. I took jobs in, wherever I could, and away from home. And then when things got bad, I came back. I had a mate who lived in Sydney in the state, and he was having the 21st, and he asked me up for his party, so I went up and I stayed 6 years. And during those 6 years, I joined a football club so I could get to meet people and socialise, and things were quiet, because I was out of my environment. But once I started to mingle around, get known around, and start to have some kind of group of friends and workmates and things like that, then the drinking got out of control again, and I used to love the footy club. I used to love going to training and the beers afterwards, and love the game, win, lose or draw. I'd get drunk. I always get drunk, and then the car accidents started coming, and court cases started coming, and all those kind of things, you know. And you know, sooner or later, you know, sooner things started to close in on me. My world started closing on me. I had to get away again, you know, the rabbit in me, you know. And I came back to Melbourne again, and you know, got another job, and you know, it was a pretty good job. But the car crashes and the accidents and the blackouts, you know, I was a blackout drinker from about the time of 18, so I qualified for this fellowship well before I even turned up, you know. And yeah, you know, and I had a good job, and I met a girl, and she knew my problems straight away. She said, "Milt, you're an alcoholic. You want to go get yourself in a rehab." She got me into Evancourt at Caulfield. And through that rehab, I got introduced to AA, and we used to go to the meetings around, you know, Elsonwick and Brighton and Little Melbourne and those kind of things. And we'd get a cab there, and we'd sit up the back. And because we were from the hospital, we weren't asked to share. But they just said, you know, just identify it. And I identified straight from the first meeting. I was an alcoholic, all right, for sure. And you know, I got out of that rehab, and I stayed sober for 12 months. I didn't go to meetings. I heard about the big book, but I never bought one, I never looked at one. And you know, I heard other people talk about it, but I never asked about it. You know, they talked about the big book, this and that, all the rest. And you know, I didn't do any of the things that were suggested to me, like keep up meetings and stay out of the old environment. I was driving my mates to the pub, and they were drinking, and I was a designated driver because I'd stay sober. You know, and I did all those things, and eventually, after all the pats on the back and all the rest of the rubbish, I picked up a drink, you know, and just during those 12 months that I didn't pick up a drink, you know, I didn't have to worry about looking to see if the car wasn't, you know, had a ding in it, or if the car was there, or I didn't have to worry about, you know, I'd go to bed and I'd get up and I'd be in the same bed and it'd be dry and all those things, you know. I didn't look at those little things that had cleared up in my life, you know. I was just so angry and annoyed, and I didn't know what was going on with me. I was missing out on something, and I wanted to be involved again. And as soon as I picked up another drink, that girl that got me into that rehab, she had to go. And so anything that got in my way of my drinking, I just threw away, got rid of it. And I changed jobs and got an even better job, and I thought, oh, I could buy a house, and I bought a house, and I thought that'll you know, if I have a bit of commitment. If I had a commitment, you know, I'd settle down, and I didn't. And then I played football down here, and then I met another girl, and she had a son, and you know, I fell in love with her family because they drank like how I drank. You know, we used to go around Sundays, and we'd drink down there, and I'd get blind drunk, and then I was a designated driver. You know, life couldn't get any better. I'd go to the footy, get drunk, I'd go to training, she'd pick me up. It was fantastic. You know, I was living the life. I thought, you know, I had a home, I had a wife. You know, we started having kids, things were going great. But it wasn't great for her, you know. But you know, after being with me, we had 2 children, and she was, or 3 children, and then we'd been together about 6 years, and she was pregnant with the 4th one, and she said, I can't live like this anymore, I'm out of here. And she moved out, and she got a unit, and the parents set her up in a unit to help her get away from me. And I used to go to that unit, and I was so bloody self-centred, and everything revolved around me. I was so upset with her and this and that. I used to drive up there when I was drunk and abuse her and this and that, and all cause scenes and all the hassles. I made all the promises, but as I've heard in these rooms, you know, all promises are soluble in alcohol, you know. And she came back after 12 months, and I don't know why, you know. And when she did come back, she tried to control my drinking. And she had no hope because I couldn't control it, you know. And you know, I'd go down for a lotto ticket and come back with a slab, you know. I'd go back down for a litre of milk, I'd come back with a slab, you know. And you know, I try to control it by just buying half a dozen, and then I'd be drink driving, going down to get more. Just nuts. I was just crazy. And you know, she used to say, I want a divorce and I hate your guts. And my alcoholic head said, I love you, Milton, dearly, and I want to stay with you forever. You know, and eventually, in the end, you know, she'd had a gutful, and you know, she said, out, that's enough. I had to leave next time, like I said earlier, you know, my home was a revolving door, and I moved back home, and my folks were in the 70s by then, and I knew I had to get back to AA. I just knew I had to get back to AA. I tried everything else and cancelled, and I bullshitted all the people that I'd ever gone to see. I'd never told anyone the truth. You know, I was never honest with anybody, you know, including myself, you know. And you know, I rang up AA Central Service Office, and they told me there was a meeting on a Thursday night at Belgrade, and I got over there, and I got there early, and I sat out in the car park, and I was having a smoke and wondering whether I should go in, you know. All my problems and all the crap that I've had in all my life, you know, and I was wondering whether I should go into this meeting. But I went in, and you know, went in, heard the thing, I got to share, and yeah, I felt comfortable again, you know. I felt comfortable in the rooms of AA, and I kept going, you know, and you know, I didn't think, you know, I thought I took 12 months, you know, I first got into AA, I think, to get my wife and kids back, but they say, you know, it doesn't matter what brings you to AA as long as you get in, you know, and I got here. And I've been here a little while now, and a lot of things have happened, you know. I've been here 26 months, but I didn't think I'd make 26 days, you know, when I first got here, no way. You know, I really struggled. The first 3 months were a bit of a hot honeymoon period. You know, I was AA nomad. I went to every meeting. I went all over the places. You know, went everywhere. You know, and you know, I didn't listen. You know, I still wasn't listening. Get a home group. So, you know, I got a home group. You know, in Dandenong on Saturday afternoon, which is great. And you know, I became secretary of that, and I'm still treasurer there now, and that's fantastic for me. But you know, like the honeymoon period for the first 3 months, yeah, that was great. And then I was really, really angry for the next 6 or 7. You know, I had to get through New Year's Eve and Christmas, and they were my first New Year's Eve and Christmases, and they were really, really hard. I knew there was an AA do at Albert Park, you know, and I wanted to go, really wanted to go, but I just couldn't go. I had to go home, lie in my bed, and just listen to everyone else having. And I was thinking that my alcoholic head was telling me they were having a good time, you know, and they probably were, because I wasn't there. If I was there, no one would have had a good time. But I got through that, and then my father died within the first probably 10 or 11 months of being sober, and then I had to help my mother bury him, and that was good because, you know, I was able to be there for her as a son, you know, and you know, grand final days are always hard, and second New Year's Eve was harder, but a little bit easy, because you know, I looked for meetings that would, you know, I didn't have a bank of sobriety. I don't believe in a bank of sobriety. You know, I believe that you just got to keep coming to meetings and keep putting your bum on the seat, you know, whether you're comfortable or not, and whatever's on, good, bad, mad, sad, just get to a meeting and talk to other members, and things are starting to improve. You know, the promises I've started to come. I've got a brand new life, but I'm starting to get one. You know, they can sometimes they're fulfilled, sometimes slowly, sometimes. I don't get to choose what gets fixed up first, or what comes better first, or what comes better second. I wish I did, you know, but I've got to take my will out of it. You know, I get up in the morning nowadays, and I say the third step free, and let someone else take control of my life, because my life was, you know, I was powerless over alcohol. You know, my life was had been unmanageable for a long, long time. You know, but things do improve. You know, they do improve. They improve every day. You know, I'm really glad to be here at another meeting, and thanks very much for letting me share.